Karen screamed across the community clubhouse meeting room like a cartoon villain who just realized the anvil was dropping straight on her perfectly coiffed head. "You've been talking to lawyers about us." Her face was the color of a boiled lobster left too long on the grill, sweat beading under the fake designer scarf she wore to look professional. She slammed a thick folder onto the folding table so hard the little American flags on the wall rattled. "Clear out your notes. You're done here. You think you're irreplaceable? You're just a retired architect, not the president. I run Willowbrook Estates now." The blinds kept rattling long after I stood up. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. I just took one long look at that folder and signed, outdated, and missing the one page that actually mattered. Then I walked out. 2 security guards from the local rent-a-cop service were already waiting in the hallway, like she had rehearsed this little public execution. Badge off, access to the community portal revoked, every email I'd ever sent to the board scrubbed clean. 20 years of quiet work wiped out with the enthusiasm of a woman who had never planted a single tree in her life. I was homeowner number 4 when Willowbrook Estates broke ground. Before the cookie-cutter McMansions, before the gated entrance with its ridiculous no-soliciting signs every 3 feet, before the HO, it even had a logo that didn't look like it was designed in Microsoft Paint. I had just finished my last big commercial project when David hired me. Said he needed someone who could draft a set of covenants that would actually protect the neighborhood instead of turning it into another soulless subdivision. I didn't just draft it. I was it. Every clause, every restriction, every backward-compatible paragraph of duct-taped legalese that kept developers from slapping up high-rises or turning the common park into a parking lot. I made that quietly, without ego, without asking for credit. Those covenants landed us the reputation that kept property values sky high. They're why we survived the 2020 housing freeze when half the other HOAs folded under special assessments. I wasn't on stage at any of the ribbon cuttings, no splashy neighborhood Facebook posts, no President's Corner newsletters with my face on them. Just late nights at my kitchen table with red pens and black coffee, fighting ambiguous wording so the next generation wouldn't have to live next to a neon-lit mini golf course. And David, he wasn't just the founding president. He was a believer. He used to say, "If this neighborhood stays beautiful, it's because of you, not because of my golf club speeches." That kind of trust was never written down. Why would it be? We were neighbors, a handshake, a long game. Then Karen happened. And before I go on, if you're still listening and any of this is poking that little spot in your gut that whispers, "Oh hell, I know this exact nightmare," do us both a favor, hit subscribe. It helps more than you know. 97% of people hear HOA horror stories and keep scrolling. But if you're still here, that means something. So stick around. Now, Karen Whitaker had the posture of a woman who read one article about setting boundaries and decided it gave her permission to fine her neighbors into bankruptcy. When David stepped down last year, the board told us Karen would be modernizing Willowbrook. First week, she added 3 new enforcement subcommittees and installed one of those ridiculous ring camera systems at the entrance that beeped every time a delivery truck idled longer than 30 seconds. She brought in a compliance consultant who used to sell timeshares in Florida. She started pushing for a new aesthetic master plan that looked great in PowerPoint, but meant your mailbox had to be painted Willowbrook Beige 47 or face a $100 fine. Suddenly there were audits, violation logs, color swatch reviews. I was asked to list my 20-year contributions on a whiteboard for some 28-year-old with a man bun who introduced himself as the community optimization facilitator. I wrote, "Covenants work. No lawsuits in 18 years. You're welcome." That didn't go over well. Karen didn't understand the documents. Didn't care to. She started calling my original work legacy restrictions in meetings like we were talking about an ugly couch in the clubhouse. At one point, I overheard her tell the vice president, "She's just one line of resistance. We need to streamline the declarations and cut the dead weight." Dead weight. The woman who wrote the exact clauses that still keep your ugly lawn gnomes from ruining everyone's resale value. So I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I quietly contacted legal. No drama. Just ask them to dig up the original master declaration from year one. Not because I was planning anything, just a gut check protection. A little voice that said, better know what they think they own before they try to sell it. That whisper saved everything, because it turned out the paperwork was incomplete. We had filed the original covenants under my name as drafter, but the full assignment to the HOA Corporation had expired before David ever got around to signing the transfer. The document was drafted, reviewed, never executed. All this time the board had been enforcing rules under a handshake and a mutual understanding, which means on paper, I was still the sole legal guardian of the declaration that gave them any power at all. And the moment Karen found out I was even asking about that document, that's when she lost her mind. That's when the screaming started. That's when my access badge stopped working. But that's also when the clock started ticking. Because Karen wasn't just kicking out some nostalgic old-timer from the early days. She was about to ram through a $280 million development partnership with Pinnacle Properties, and she didn't even realize she didn't legally own the engine that made the whole deal possible. And I wasn't about to stop her. Karen strutted into the monthly board meeting like a woman auditioning for a reality show called Startup Psycho, HOA Edition, the rebrand that killed everything good about Willowbrook. She didn't ask where the bodies were buried. She just paved over the graves with pastel-colored violation notices and buzzwords. First week, she renamed the Architectural Review Committee to Velocity Compliance, slapped QR codes on every rule sign, and fined 2 of our best longtime volunteers for attitude misalignment. They'd been here 9 and 11 years respectively. One of them had personally redesigned the community park during the 2018 flood recovery. Gone just like that. Her next move? Consultants. Plural. A horde of them. Karen loved consultants like toddlers love iPads. Obsessively and without understanding how any of it worked. They came in with clipboards and color swatches, smiling as they dismantled 20 years of protections under the name of efficiency. And Karen soaked it up like a sponge full of overpriced kombucha. Let's cut the bloat. Flatten the enforcement hierarchy. Simplify the covenant pipeline. It sounded like leadership until you realized she was basically removing the foundation because she didn't like the color of the original ink. Budgets got slashed. Quarterly violation reviews became a full contact sport. Homeowners were told to submit compliance OKRs in slide deck form with animated transitions. Suddenly, I was expected to summarize 2 decades of legal architecture into 3 bullet points and a bar graph for stakeholder alignment. One morning, I walked into the clubhouse to grab coffee and heard Karen's voice through the glass wall of the conference room. She wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. The smirk did all the violence. She's a redundancy, she told the room. We've already got 2 compliance leads. If she left tomorrow, nothing would break. Nobody replied. No one corrected her. Just the soft, suck-up laughter of people trying to keep their mailboxes the right shade of beige. That moment didn't enrage me. It clarified everything. The game had changed. I wasn't protecting the neighborhood anymore. I was a liability to be erased. Not for cause, not for incompetence, just for convenience. So I did the thing I should have done years ago. I opened my secure archive box in the garage, dusted off the old blue binder, and checked the name at the top of the original master declaration. Mine. I opened the provisional filing. Mine again. Expired? Yes. But never replaced. No assignment of rights, no license renewal on file. I sat there that night cross-legged on the garage floor with 20 years of neighborhood history spread around me like a war map. Version control logs, internal emails, yellow legal pads covered in my handwriting. I remember the conversation with David in year 2 when the first developer tried to buy the back 40 acres. Do we need to file this formally? I'd asked. He shrugged. For now, we just need it to work. He always meant to make it official. It just never became a priority. And now the woman who thought covenant was a fancy word for yoga pose was trying to strip mine the neighborhood for a $280 million development play. I reached out to legal, not some flashy in-house guy with a LinkedIn full of HOA TikToks. No, I emailed Patricia Yoon, our original counsel. She'd gone solo 5 years ago and only worked with founders who actually built things. I sent her a 3-line email and a scan of the unsigned assignment page. Her response was short. This isn't minor. If the master declaration was never legally assigned, the current board doesn't own enforcement authority. And if they don't own it, they can't sell it. I stared at those words for a long time. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about revenge. It was about survival, about leverage, about the difference between being erased and being the one holding the pen. And Karen, she had no idea that the signature she never got was about to become the fuse on a $280 million bomb. The door didn't even creak open. She kicked it, literally kicked it like a toddler who just got grounded. Karen stormed into my driveway because she couldn't legally enter my house anymore, with a face so red it looked photoshopped. Her phone was still in her hand, lit up with the legal memo I knew too well. The one I'd sent Patricia. The one that clearly got forwarded by someone with more access than ethics. "You've been talking to lawyers about us?" She shrieked like I had just sold neighborhood secrets to the highest bidder instead of, God forbid, asking a question about my own work. She didn't wait for an answer. This wasn't a conversation. It was a performance. Karen thrived on theater, and today's role was HOA president betrayed by trusted neighbor. "You're poisoning the well," she snapped, pacing across my lawn in her little kitten heels. "We are on the verge of a major liquidity event, and you decide now's the time to pull some stunt about ownership." Stunt. That's what she called it. I said nothing. Let her spiral. That's the thing about Karen. If you let her monologue long enough, she'll hang herself with her own decorative scarf. "You know what this looks like?" she said, pointing at stupid gold pin she always carried like it was Excalibur. "This looks like sabotage. This looks like someone trying to tank the Pinnacle deal so they can cash in later." I finally spoke, voice level. "You've made your point. Now if you're going to remove me, get to it." Her lips twitched. So instead she pulled the oldest HOA trick in the book. "You are hereby removed from all committees effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Security will escort you off the common areas." She didn't say my name, just you. Like I was a stain on her new modern rebrand. I stood, took off my volunteer badge, set it next to the folder, picked up my coffee mug, the one with world's okayest architect in chipped letters my daughter gave me, slid my personal flash drive into my pocket, and left the rest. I opened the gate and stepped into the street. Heads turned from every front window. Slackers froze mid-lawn mowing. No one said anything because everyone knew, even if they didn't know why, that something real had just cracked down the middle. The security guy met me at the sidewalk. Big guy, apologetic eyes. I held out my wrists mockingly. "You gonna cuff me too?" He half smiled. "Just need to walk you to your driveway. Then let's walk." I didn't look back. Didn't give Karen the satisfaction. Just walked calm and upright while behind me the clubhouse kept humming with its forced positivity and motivational signs that now meant nothing. But the second I stepped onto my own property and heard the little gate click shut, I knew exactly what kind of woman Karen was. Petty, scared, and dangerously unaware that the neighborhood she'd built her ego inside didn't have its deed in her name. The drive home, well, I was already home, was dead silent. Not because I was stewing, but because I wasn't. There was no fury, no screaming into the steering wheel, no petty revenge playlist. Just one crystal clear thought circling like a hawk. She's about to find out what happens when you cut out the one person holding the foundation together. My kitchen was exactly how I'd left it that morning. Mismatched mugs in the sink. An unopened Amazon box of new garden tools on the counter. The faint smell of sandalwood from the candle I forgot to blow out. I stepped over my shoes, set the mug down, and walked straight to the coat closet. Tucked behind a box of winter scarves was the binder, blue plastic warped at the corners from too many years of being shoved around. Label on the spine in faded Sharpie. Willowbrook Master Declaration, initial draft. I brought it to the kitchen table, opened it, and began flipping pages with the slow hands of someone preparing for surgery. Page 3, provisional filing under my name. Expired 2005. Page 5, Licensing memo between David and me. Temporary permission granted for HOA use. No dates, no lawyer signatures, just initials and a handshake email stapled in the corner. Page 9. Assignment of rights document. Drafted, reviewed, never signed. No witness line, no notarization, no legal transference in 20 years. Nobody followed up. Nobody filed the continuation. Nobody closed the loop because David trusted me and I trusted him. And neither of us thought that a woman with a Pinterest board of HOA aesthetic goals would one day run the place like it was her birthright. I leaned back, stared at the binder, and let the moment settle. Not panic, not thrill, just confirmation. The kind of clarity that doesn't yell. It whispers, leverage. I picked up my laptop and started drafting an email. Not to Karen, not to Patricia, but to someone Karen hadn't even considered yet. The due diligence firm overseeing the $280 million Pinnacle partnership. I'd met their junior associate once at a neighborhood planning conference back in 2019. He asked smart questions about setback requirements and wrote thank you emails with bullet points. I remembered his name. That's all I needed. Subject line, declaration, licensing inquiry, Willowbrook Core Governance. Body, hello. I believe there may be an unexamined licensing gap in the core governing documents your team is currently reviewing. I'm the original drafter of the master declaration that underpins Willowbrook's entire enforcement authority. Attached is a scan of the unsigned assignment agreement and provisional filing under my name. Happy to discuss further if useful. Attach the scans. No commentary, no threats, no uppercase. Just a kind of red flag that lawyers wake up in cold sweats over. I hit send, and I made a cup of tea. Because here's what Karen didn't know, and what every good HOA president should know. Due diligence lawyers don't care about your vision board or your modernization countdown clock. They care about liability. And nothing screams liability like a $280 million deal trying to sell a neighborhood it doesn't legally control. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need drama. I had the document. I had the name. I had the truth. And now so did they. The first ripples came quietly, like distant thunder. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be, but I knew the tempo of panic when it hit suburban airspace. A friend from the finance committee texted me late Tuesday. You left at the exact right time. Something's brewing. Karen's been pacing like a raccoon on energy drinks. I didn't reply. I just sipped my tea and refreshed the LinkedIn page for Pinnacle Properties. Nothing public yet, but I knew the stage was being set. Pinnacle was known for one thing, exhaustive diligence. They didn't partner unless they'd poked every corner of your foundation and found no termites. And when it came to Willowbrook, the stick had landed on the master declaration. Word leaked that Pinnacle's audit team had requested a clean chain of title for all governing documents. Specifically the original declaration that powered every fine, every rule, every no pink flamingos enforcement. A formality. Sure, unless someone had forgotten to, legally own it. First they asked Karen's chief compliance officer, a nervous guy named Aaron who once told me he still didn't fully understand how the setback clauses worked. His reply, according to someone who overheard the call, was a symphony of, as far as I understand, and to the best of my recollection. Not great. Then Karen jumped in. Classic Karen, all charm, no documentation. She claimed the declaration was fully internal and assigned long ago. Pinnacle asked for the signed agreement. Karen promised to forward it by end of day. That was Monday. By Thursday, legal hadn't sent anything because they had nothing to send. And now someone up the food chain was asking questions Karen couldn't smile her way around. So what did she do? She called David, dragged the founding president, her own mentor, back into the clubhouse like a war veteran summoned to explain a battle he never wanted to fight again. They said it was just for historical clarity, but everyone knew. The partners wanted someone whose name still meant something. Someone who might remember where the bodies were buried. And David, he remembered. The room was filled with half the board, Pinnacle's audit crew, outside counsel, and a few associates pretending not to text under the table. I wasn't there, but I got a perfect play-by-play from one of the paralegals later over coffee. She said it was the quietest moment she'd ever seen in suburban real estate drama. Pinnacle's lead counsel, a sharp woman named Claire with glasses that looked like they came with a kill switch, slid a single printed form across the table. Can you explain who the sole proprietor of the Master Declaration, internally called WBCC, is? David picked up the form, read the top line, then the next. My name. Still listed. Still active. Still unassigned. 20 years later. According to the paralegal, David didn't say a word for a full 10 seconds, just blinked once. Then he looked up and said flatly, "She built it." No one spoke. Not Karen. Not the vice president who'd been parroting community ownership for months. Not even the junior analyst who once called the declaration just some old paperwork. The silence was cold, clean. Claire didn't smirk. She just circled my name with a red pen and said, "We'll need to pause the partnership process until this is resolved." Translation: until you explain how you're selling a neighborhood you don't have title to. David pushed the paper back. I was told he didn't even look at Karen. Just folded his hands and stared straight ahead like a man watching the community he helped birth start to sink under new management. I got a ping on my phone an hour later. New email. Subject: Declaration Clarification Request. Urgent. No greeting, just bullet points, follow-ups, a request to chat. I closed the message and slid my phone across the table. I wasn't rushing this. The truth was finally breaking the surface. And Karen, for all her bluster, was finding out what it felt like to be on the other end of rules she didn't understand. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need to be. The only name that mattered was already in ink. The morning it hit the neighborhood Facebook group, I was in line at the local diner halfway through ordering a Denver omelet when my phone buzzed. 3 alerts, one from a local real estate blog, one from an ex-board member, and one from a Google keyword notification I'd set up years ago and forgotten. All of them said the same thing. Willowbrook Partnership paused amid governance irregularities. The press release was a masterclass in vagueness, but you could smell the panic between the lines. Procedural review. Ongoing declaration clarification. No further comment at this time. Translation: the partners backed out. The deal was dead. Willowbrook's reputation tanked before lunch. By evening, internal chatter had leaked to industry forums. Someone posted that the delay was due to an unresolved governing asset chain. Within hours, Reddit threads and Nextdoor screenshots lit up. Investors started emailing the board. One of the consultants Karen had paraded around like a show pony tweeted, "When due diligence bites back," then deleted it 10 minutes later. Too late. Screenshots live forever. Karen, of course, tried to spin it. She released a video on the neighborhood portal, filmed in her glossy home office, sleeves rolled up, trying to look authentic. Said something about technical housekeeping and ensuring our standards match our ambition. It had 63 likes and over 200 comments. Most of them subtle knives wrapped in polite HOA language. Appreciate the transparency. Hope this gets resolved quickly. My favorite. You've got this, Queen. Internally, though, the oxygen was thinning fast. Emergency board call scheduled Friday at 8 a.m. Sharp. Remote access only. Invitees restricted. That's how you knew it was serious. David was on it, which meant Karen didn't get to control the tone anymore. The woman who once said, "Why bring Dad into this? He's retired," was now leaning hard on the one person who could possibly vouch for the mess she'd made. And me? I got a very polite email from external counsel, different firm, big reputation. Subject: assignment request, WBCC Master Declaration. They called it a minor administrative error. Said they'd appreciate a conversation. Asked if I'd consider signing a retroactive assignment to preserve partnership continuity. Offered an NDA, compensation, even hinted at a public acknowledgement of my contributions. Should that be of interest? I didn't respond. Because when you spend 20 years drafting something brick by clause, you don't hand it back to the woman who just tried to bulldoze your house. Besides, Karen hadn't even reached out herself. She sent lawyers. Like this was a parking ticket, not a foundation crack. Instead of replying, I opened my old draft folder. Not to gloat, just to remember. The comments in the margin were still there. Some silly, some dated, but every single one had my initials. It wasn't just leverage anymore. It was ownership. And the people around Karen, they were starting to see it. Word from inside was that legal had started covering their asses. Emails forwarded to outside counsel. The compliance officer had stopped attending meetings. The landscaping committee started making backup copies of everything just in case. Nobody said the word, but everyone felt it. Collapse. And Karen, she was flailing. She blamed legal, then David, then outside agitators. She even tried floating a rumor that I had sabotaged the declaration process out of spite. But nobody bought it. Because when the only document that matters has someone else's name on it, the spin doesn't stick. I wasn't in the building anymore. But my absence had become louder than her leadership ever was. And for the first time in weeks, I slept like the lights were finally off in a neighborhood that didn't belong to her. David's name popped up in my inbox on a Sunday. No assistant, no forwarding, just David Thompson and a subject line that read, "Let's talk." He didn't even use punctuation. That's how I knew he'd written it himself. I opened it expecting ego, or at least polite fury. But what I got instead was something I never thought I'd hear from David. Not after everything. Not after he let his successor turn my life's work into a marketing deck. He wrote, "I didn't know. I should have. That's on me. Would you be willing to talk? No lawyers, no games, just clarity." 3 sentences and none of them blamed me. I waited 4 hours before replying, not to punish him, just to make sure I wasn't answering from spite. Then I typed one line. The license was conditional. You'll find the clause near the bottom of page 47. He didn't respond right away, but when he did, it wasn't an argument, just understood. Clause 12.6b, page 47, buried in a section nobody ever reads, drafted by Patricia back when we still thought we'd be neighbors forever. The clause states that the licensing agreement for the master declaration is voided in the event the original drafter is removed without cause and without a 30-day transition period. A safeguard, she called it, in case the board ever forgot who actually wrote the thing. David had signed it. Karen had never read it. And now it was live. The board met again that Thursday. I wasn't on the call, but I got the rundown from someone in accounting who hadn't spoken to me in 6 years and suddenly wanted to catch up. The energy in the room was nuclear. The moment the clause was read aloud verbatim, 2 board members requested outside counsel on record. Pinnacle had sent a letter of concern, not a formal withdrawal, not yet, but close. Karen was present for the first half of the call, then muted, then gone, suspended, pending review. That was the official language. Internally, everyone knew what that meant. No announcement was made publicly. No portal message, no memo, just a slow eraser. Her name removed from the top of the org chart. Her direct reports reassigned. Her president's corner, bio redirected to a 404-page. I didn't tweet. I didn't post a single well on Nextdoor. Instead, I sat at my desk, lit a candle, and updated my local backup. I hadn't won in the chest-thumping way people expect these stories to end. There was no courtroom, no raised voice, no moment where I dropped the binder on the table and said checkmate. But I didn't need all that. I had something quieter, something cleaner, leverage. Because when you walk away holding the one page everyone else forgot to read, when your name sits untouched and irreplaceable on the architecture of something they thought they owned, you don't need revenge. You already have the ending written. They just hadn't gotten to your chapter yet. The company-wide, neighborhood-wide, email hit inboxes at 9:07 a.m. On a Monday, just as predictable and sterile as any other damage control blast. Subject line, leadership update and governance review. But everyone in Willowbrook, from the CFO of the local bank to the intern mowing lawns, knew what it was really about. David had finally spoken. The message was 2 paragraphs long. No names, no timeline, no hint of the battlefield behind closed doors. Just a vague admission. An internal governance error has unfortunately impacted our current partnership negotiations. We are conducting a full internal review and remain committed to transparency and operational integrity. Translation: they lost the deal. Pinnacle officially pulled out that same afternoon. No press conference, just a 2-line update on their website. The property values dipped. Investor forums lit up. Some blamed technical debt. Others founder missteps. A few tried to float the idea that Pinnacle had overestimated their interest from start. But anyone who'd read the tea leaves knew the truth. Willowbrook tried to sell a crown jewel it didn't legally own, and the one person who could sign it over had been walked out like a liability. I didn't dance on Karen's grave. I didn't need to, because 3 days after that email, my phone rang. No caller ID, but I recognized the voice immediately. It was the new general counsel Pinnacle had insisted the board bring in. She got straight to the point. We'd like to formally offer full retroactive compensation for the declaration recognition of your role as original drafter and an advisory seat on the governance board moving forward. No fluff, no flattery, just a clean offer. Like someone who finally realized they weren't dealing with a disgruntled homeowner. They were dealing with the architect who chose not to burn the neighborhood down when she easily could have. I didn't rush to say yes. Instead, I asked 2 questions. Will the agreement acknowledge original authorship in all public records moving forward? Yes. And will it be filed with an effective date matching the original drafting year? Yes. Then I said, send the paperwork. We didn't discuss Karen. We didn't need to. Her shadow was already being scrubbed from the walls. Her name wasn't spoken anymore, not out of respect, but out of cleanup protocol. She wasn't fired publicly. She just became absent, a ghost in the systems. She never understood. David followed up a few days later with a personal note, not an email, a handwritten letter delivered to my door with no return address. I should have safeguarded you better, it read. But you safeguarded the neighborhood. And in the end, that's what mattered. I folded the letter and slid it into the same binder that started this mess. The one with the unsigned assignment form, now joined by a full legal agreement with my name listed first. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like correction, a rebalancing of weight. And somewhere between the silence and the signatures, I realized I wasn't bitter. I was just done letting people call something theirs when my fingerprints were all over it. This wasn't about getting even. It was about finally being seen. The meeting took place on the 12th floor of a neutral third-party law office. Sleek, gray, sterile. A space designed to kill emotion on contact. No branded pens, no photos of smiling homeowners. Just a long conference table, glass walls, and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights that felt more like a hospital than a negotiation room. Which honestly suited me just fine. They'd asked if I wanted to return to the clubhouse for the signing. I declined before they finished the sentence. That building didn't feel like mine anymore. It hadn't in years. I didn't need the gesture. I just needed the ink. Legal was already seated when I arrived. 2 junior counsels, 1 notepad each, flanked by the new general counsel, who offered a nod that actually felt like respect, not protocol. David was there too, in a charcoal blazer that hung a little looser than it used to. His eyes were tired, but he stood when I entered. Old school manners. The kind of thing he used to say mattered when everything else went sideways. He didn't apologize. He didn't need to. Some things land heavier in silence. On the table in front of me was the unsigned assignment document, the original one. My initials were already on the bottom corner from back when I'd first reviewed it. Karen had called it a formality at the time, said there were bigger things to focus on. Now it was the only thing that mattered. I flipped through the pages slowly, not to stall, but to savor the reversal. Every clause had been reviewed, every term renegotiated. They'd even included a timeline of public acknowledgement, my name listed retroactively in press materials, filings, and investor decks. Not because I begged for it, because they had to. Because now the neighborhood couldn't pretend I hadn't been there. Equity finalized, not options. Real shares in the common areas, real percentages, the kind that vest with voting power. Licensing fees, retroactive to drafting year one, indexed to market growth. No room for interpretation. And then in the final folder, a single clean page, my signature line blank. I took the pen, uncapped it slowly, and signed. First name, last name, the way it should have been 20 years ago. David watched the whole thing without blinking. When I pushed the page across the table, he nodded once, but I saw his hand tremble as he reached for it. Maybe guilt, maybe relief, maybe both. Karen, of course, wasn't there. She hadn't been seen in weeks. Some said she was advising other HOAs in the next county. Others said she'd retreated to some luxury condo, trying to rebrand herself as a resilient visionary. I didn't care. Her absence was louder than any closing speech she could have given. The org chart no longer listed a president, just an interim committee. No neighborhood farewell post, no press release. Just gone. As I stood to leave, the general counsel offered me a copy of the signed agreement in a branded folder. I took the pages, left the folder. At the elevator, David stepped beside me and said quietly, we used to call our neighborhood. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I just said, for 20 years, you called it your neighborhood, but my name was on it the whole time. And then the elevator doors opened. No applause, no music, no dramatic closing line etched in gold. Just the hum of justice done properly and the quiet satisfaction of a name finally on the document that had always belonged to it.